Hi guys, welcome back to GTEC Motorworks. The BMW Z4, does it have common problems? Yes it does. Are we going to talk about it? Yes we are. So in previous videos we have talked about BMW's issue with retaining the oil inside the engine. I could go on for ages and ages about oil leaks on these particular cars, so that's exactly what I'm going to do. They do suffer again with the rocker cover gaskets, they do suffer with the oil filter housing, and again they do suffer with the sump leaking. At least they are consistent and at least they're easy to fix. There's plenty of room under the bonnet, there's plenty of room under the car, so it isn't going to cost you a fortune to get these issues fixed. So again, we're going to talk about misfire. Coil packs are again an obvious choice on these, along with the spark plugs. They do have a couple of issues with the fuel injectors, so again that is something else worth looking at. The high pressure fuel pump on these is also a bit of an issue. It's chain driven, it sits underneath the inlet manifold, and we have come across quite a few of these causing problems. Now this can range from a single misfire, or it can give you a multiple misfire issue. It can lead you down the wrong path if you don't know what you're looking for. So again, if you're suffering from misfire with your Z4, you know exactly where to bring it. At GTEC Motorworks we've worked on a few and we know what we're looking for. Some of the earlier Z4s, they had an issue with the brake vacuum pump. This was first noticeable when the pedal either went very, very soft or it went very, very hard. There is a repair kit available for them, and to be perfectly honest, on a vehicle of this age now, a replacement pump isn't a very expensive item. So there's a couple of different engine options available with the Z4. Some are better than others, and again we're looking at coolant issues. So a lot of these, they did go over to the electronic cooling pump, which, as we've discussed before, it does have a few problems. Electricity and water, they're not the best of friends. And again with the thermostat, the electronic thermostats, we used to have issues with those. We used to have all sorts of problems with the radiator cooling fan, the control unit, the relay box that came bolted to the fan cowling. Again, something else to watch out for. It sits right at the front, it's open to water contamination, not just from coolant but from the elements. So that was a bit of a common issue. Another issue that we see quite a few of, not just this particular model, but of BMWs in general, issues with the ABS. So the customer will come in complaining about an ABS light on, traction control light on, sometimes even the pad warning light. And what we actually find is they have a bit of an inherent problem with the pressure sensors which are built into the ABS pumps. This was quite a costly repair initially. It was literally a brand new pump and control unit, all one, only available from the dealer. As the vehicle's got a little older, there are a couple of companies out there that do repairs on these. We actually do repairs ourselves on them, and you can get replacement parts now for a much better price. So the E89, especially the earliest version, these had a bit of an issue with the rear drive shafts. The CV joint was prone to failure, not brilliant. Most of these have been rectified. We don't see that many of them around, but you know there could still be a few low mileage vehicles that haven't experienced that problem, so it is definitely something to watch out for. While we're on the subject of Z4, the previous model, the E85, the Z vehicles are all cracking cars. They're a wonderful little touring car, they're a great GT, they're a great roadster. But the E85, the previous version, these were prone to a bit of an issue with the steering. So the feel through the steering wasn't brilliant. A lot of people describe it as sticky or notchy, occasionally feeling a juddering through the steering. So if you are looking for a Z car, there's not really much we can do about that steering feel. It's just an inherent issue with that particular design. So you want to be going for the later version, the E89. So electrical issues, this is something that it's quite important to bear in mind, whether you've got one, whether you're thinking about buying one. There has been quite a large recall, not necessarily just this model, BMWs in general, E90 and so on, all around about the same sort of age period. They had a particular issue with the battery cable. So with most BMWs, the battery is in the boot, the electrical components, the fuse boxes and so on are fitted in the front. We have a large cable that runs from the rear of the vehicle right the way down to the front, where it comes up inside the vehicle, around the back of the dashboard and into the fuse box. There's a bit of a tight bend, probably the best way to put it. Now when you start to bend cables, it's not the best situation. You've got an outer casing, you've got the inner wire, it can start to cause issues, especially behind the dashboard where you get a lot of cold temperatures and then hot temperatures, cold temperatures, hot temperatures. The wires do crack. Now unfortunately this does lead to complete electrical failure, so it doesn't matter whether you're parked up, it doesn't matter whether you're driving the vehicle, sudden loss of electrical components, and that does mean everything. So you'll lose your ignition, you will lose your lighting, you will lose your radio, you will lose the operation for your windows, absolutely nothing will work. Obviously not an ideal situation. So if you've got one, you're thinking about buying one, check your dealer. You can also check online with the government website. You can see whether this still has an outstanding recall for the battery cable. Other electrical issues with these vehicles, they're not too bad. Despite the age of some of these cars, the electrical systems are pretty good, but there's something to bear in mind with these, particularly convertibles: water ingress into the boot. They had a couple of weak points, one of which was the weather seal fitted to the rear boot lid. The other issue was the vents which were fitted on the side. This obviously allows fumes out of the vehicle but not into the vehicle. They do allow water in. Now this can cause all sorts of issues. There's a lot of wiring in the back, there's a lot of control modules. We've had issues with the parking sensors, we get a lot of issues with the rear lights. The rear lights themselves have also got their own weather seal, which does fail over time. The seals become hard, it allows water in, you can get all sorts of issues going on with your lights. You'll also get water into some of the electrical components for the roof operation. Now the roof operation on this, it's a convertible, it is particularly important. You don't buy one of these because it looks good, you buy it because it's a convertible. So the water ingress into the boot is just one issue you can have with the roofs on these. I'd like to say they're not a problem, but I can't. They are a problem. There's a lot of components, there's a lot of moving parts, there's a lot of electrical connectors, there's a lot of hydraulics. And unfortunately, all those things over time, lots of movement, up, down, backwards, forwards, open, close. You're gonna get a few little niggly issues. Now, there's a couple of common problems with these roofs. In particular, people will talk about micro switches fitted in the roof shell, but we've come across multiple issues. So as I say, we've looked at hydraulics on these, we have looked at electrical, and sometimes simple things such as adjustment. So if the vehicle's had a bit of a knock at some time, or if it's had work that has required the roof to be moved into a particular position, if it's not put back in exactly the right spot, it's going to cause all sorts of problems. There is around about 10 little micro switches that determine the position of this roof, and if one of those is just slightly off, nothing is going to work. You're going to jump in the car, it's a nice hot day, you're going to try and put the roof down, it's not going to work. Unfortunately, that's not the least of your problems. The roof is linked into the rear boot operation. The whole rear end of the car does lift out during the boot operation, the roof operation. When it all folds back down, it all pulls back into position. If there's a fault with the roof, there's a very good chance you are not going to be able to get your boot open. Not the best if you've just been to the shops and you've filled it up with ice cream. While we're on the subject of the roof operation and the boot, these do also have the soft close boot lid. So you pop it down, it then slides into position. You can have quite a few issues with that. So there are occasions where it just doesn't want to close. You shut it, it lifts up, it shuts, it lifts up, it shuts, and so on and so on. You will also have problems with it maybe not opening, and you'll also have the problem where it is definitely shut, but while you're driving down the road, annoyingly, the inside of the car is telling you that the outside of the car is still open. It's a bit of an issue. It can be a costly issue. There are a few shortcuts you can take with it, but it is something that is repairable, so don't worry. Okay, so that might sound like a lot of issues, but it's really not that bad. So most of the electrical problems on this are fairly straightforward. The wiring issue was a recall, so if you've got one of these, make sure it's done. If you're thinking of getting one of these, get it booked into the dealers, let them sort it out, there won't be any charge. With regards to the rest of it, your main issues, your oil leaks, they're all pretty simple to repair. The parts are readily available, and there's plenty of aftermarket components available. When it comes to the roof is probably one of the biggest bugbears of Z4 ownership. If you've got one that doesn't work, don't leave it too long before you get it fixed. The longer you leave it, the worse it's going to be. And if you're thinking of buying one, make sure it works and find out if they've had any work done. I hope you've found this video interesting, a little bit informative with regards to the Z4. If you like what you see, click on those like buttons and the subscribe buttons and the share, and we will see you again for the next video.